Getting real about artificial intelligence. Experts warn it's going to make understanding what's true and what's false this election that much harder.
Even to the trained eye, they can be remarkable.
We verify how to spot AI-generated photos, videos, and texts so you don't potentially share harmful information. Plus, tired of these texts? The constant buzz from campaigns asking for cash is only getting louder as Election Day gets closer. But is your money always making it to the candidate? We verify what to know before you donate. And we are looking into a viral claim about poll workers writing on your ballot. What we found to make sure your vote is counted. I'm Josh Sidorowicz. Verify on 10 Tampa Bay is your resource for the facts to understand what's true and what's false, especially during an election. But being able to spot the difference is becoming increasingly difficult because of artificial intelligence. Take these three images, for example, appearing to show President Biden, former President Trump, and an armed militia member standing outside of a polling place. None of these are real. Researchers at the nonprofit Center for Countering Digital Hate created them using popular AI programs to show just how easy it is.
Technology moves so quickly, way faster than our ability to regulate it or our ability to really detect that it's false. So that's where we are now. And in some cases, you won't even have to have an app. It's actually available on some of the newer smartphones.
And the results are really remarkable,
They are remarkable,
especially to the untrained eye.
Even to the trained eye, they can be remarkable.
Al Tompkins spent decades working in newsrooms. Now he spends his time training journalists about the emerging threats of AI and deepfake technology.
2024 is a pivotal year for this all to come to fruition, because there are going to be 63 countries around the world involving 2.6 billion people covered by national elections. When you get that many countries that are up for grabs for disinformation, you can start influencing global politics, global policies, global security. Perfect opportunity for disruptors.
And the disruption has already begun. Our Verify team has previously fact-checked deepfakes like this one, made to sound like the president was reinstating the draft.
The recommended way forward will be to invoke the Selective Service Act.
It's false. Or this viral deepfake with audio manipulated to make it sound like Hillary Clinton was endorsing Governor Ron DeSantis when he was still in the race for president.
But I actually like Ron DeSantis.
Fake again. So if seeing is no longer believing, how can you spot it? Using Tompkins, along with these sources, I'll show you how to spot AI-generated photos, videos, and text so you can avoid sharing potentially harmful information.
Right now, AI has a real problem with little tiny things.
When it comes to AI images,
Start looking for things that are there that shouldn't be, and things that are misshapen.
look at the hands, fingers, and ears first. Text and backgrounds can also give clues that it's fake. When it comes to fake video and audio, pay attention to how the person is moving. Look at this woman's neck. Her head is moving, but her body isn't. And often the audio won't match up with the person's mouth. Like in this deepfake that circulated last year, claiming to show the New York District Attorney dropping charges against former President Trump.
New York District Attorney's Office, after an extensive, thorough investigation.
Just this year, the FCC outlawed AI-generated robocalls after one mimicking President Biden's voice circulated before the New Hampshire primary, discouraging voters from casting a ballot.
It's important that you save your vote for the November election.
But researchers remain concerned about how AI could be weaponized to target specific voting blocks in key states, as calls grow for tech companies to do more to safeguard against it. Here in Florida earlier this year, Governor Ron DeSantis signed legislation that will require political candidates to disclose if they use AI in their ads or any other communication with voters. But even then, some big questions remain about how exactly it will be enforced. Speaking of ads, a question that comes up a lot during election season is whether candidates are guaranteed equal airtime. We verify the rules still to come. But first, before you donate, who's really sending you that political text message? 10 Tampa Bay uncovered some groups claiming to be with the campaigns are really just pocketing your cash instead. We verify how to make sure your contribution goes to the candidate you want.
It's just one after the other.
It has become a sort of daily doom scroll for Steve Giglio in Bartow, sorting through the deluge of political donation requests.
Like, I've actually missed personal text messages as I'm scrolling through it again.
And he isn't alone. Americans received a record 15 billion political texts during the 2022 midterms, with even more expected by the time this election cycle wraps up. But they aren't always coming directly from the candidates. Instead, from groups with names like Democratic Power or Patriots for America. Steve emailed Verify, wondering if all these requests are really legitimate.
Are they going to the candidate that you're choosing to vote for eventually? That's probably the biggest question.
So let's verify, are groups asking for your donations always giving that money to the candidates they claim to support? Our sources are the Campaign Legal Center, campaign finance data from the Federal Election Commission, and Chara Torres-Spelisi, an expert in election law with Stetson University. She says the short answer to Steve's question is no, because some of these groups asking for your hard-earned cash are what she calls scam PACs.
A scam PAC is a PAC that pretends to raise money for either a candidate or a cause, and then the organizers of the scam PAC just pocket the money and run.
PACs, short for Political Action Committee, are tax-exempt organizations that are supposed to pool campaign contributions to then donate to candidates or causes. But Verify reviewed federal records that reveal groups like Democratic Power on the left or Patriots for American Leadership on the right gave just a fraction of the millions they raised to the candidates they claim to support. Watchdog organizations like Open Secrets and the Campaign Legal Center have uncovered dozens of similar scam PACs, siphoning money from unsuspecting voters and instead spending it on travel, administrative costs, or simply more fundraising. So then why aren't they being stopped? The DOJ has managed to bust some fraudsters behind a few of these scam PACs, but the FEC's former chair has said it, quote, shockingly can't stop these scam artists until Congress takes action and gives the FEC the tools to regulate them. Current law does give committees a lot of leeway on how they use their funds. So before handing over your credit card, Torres-Spelisi recommends searching for the official candidate campaign committee, or looking for trusted intermediaries like Act Blue on the left or Patriot Pass on the right.
It's completely frustrating because you want individuals who are interested in politics to have a good experience when they give to a candidate.
You know, the political season is kind of chaotic enough.
For Steve, look, he gets the buzz around this election. He'd just rather it not be his phone that was buzzing.
The texts to me are just an unnecessary thing. I just wish we could kind of avoid that or figure out a way to control it a little bit better.
And sometimes scammers might be after more than just your money. The Better Business Bureau warns to watch out for texts with links to take a poll. Legit pollsters will never need information like your birthday or your social security number. And by the way, if you are wondering how they got your number to begin with, voter registration records, including your name, party, affiliation, and phone number, are all public under Florida law. And unlike businesses, political campaigns do not need your permission to text you as long as they aren't doing it with an automated system. Next up, a Verify viewer sent us this Facebook post that claims an election worker can disqualify your ballot simply by writing on it. This is false, and using these sources, including Sarasota County Supervisor of Elections Ron Turner, let's verify why.
So there's a lot of processes in place that would keep this from occurring, what's being said on this post. But the poll workers do not mark ballots.
Turner says here in Florida, poll workers are trained to not mark ballots. And bottom line, even if they did, it does not just disqualify or invalidate the ballot. If there were any markings interfering with your ballot being scanned, you would simply be given a new one to fill out if you were voting in person. If you voted by mail and it couldn't be scanned because of markings, a canvassing board meets in public to count those ballots by hand. Turner says when vote-by-mail ballots are being opened by poll workers to be scanned, they are not allowed to have any blue or black ink in the room to avoid any possibility of markings. And remember, too, you can always see when your vote-by-mail ballot is received and counted by logging into your Supervisor of Elections website. If there is some kind of discrepancy, like a marking, or say you forgot to sign the envelope, your election supervisor will always notify you, and there are a number of ways to resolve any issue. Every election supervisor here in Florida will tell you all legitimate ballots are always accounted for. When you get your ballot for this November's general election, you'll have several constitutional amendments to decide on here in Florida, including whether to legalize recreational marijuana. If at least 60% of voters approve the proposal, also known as Amendment 3, the state will allow adults 21 and older to possess, purchase, or use marijuana for non-medical purposes. But viewers like Cynthia Kay in Palm Harbor asked if ads that say passing Amendment 3 will generate billions for schools are true. I spoke with Ariane Detail with our national team show Verify This about the potential impact.
Josh, would Amendment 3 automatically legalize recreational marijuana?
So, no, and that's sort of a common misconception with this, that it would just be automatic if voters were to approve it, which the threshold here in Florida is 60% at least, right? But what it really is doing, technically speaking, is it's setting into motion this process where if voters say, yes, we want this, lawmakers then have to go in and write the legislation and pass the legislation that will actually help to implement and, most importantly, to regulate this. And that process, it could take a while, could take years, just judging by what we've dealt with previous constitutional amendments here, Ariane. So if we look back, this sort of laid the roadmap. 2016 was when Florida voters approved constitutional amendment to legalize medicinal marijuana.
So if Amendment 3 is implemented, how much money could legalized recreational marijuana actually bring into Florida?
Boy, so that's the big question, right? And that is one of the big arguments for legalizing it here. And so you've got a group of economists that work for state agencies. They represent the governor's office, the state legislature, same thing that you would do like for a fiscal analysis of a bill. They did this for this constitutional amendment, and they reviewed other states' experiences where this is legal, where they do have retail sales of non-medical marijuana. And their estimate was that this Amendment 3, it could generate a bit of a margin here. At the low end, about $195 million. At the high end, about $431 million. That would be an annual tax revenue.
Okay, then so where did this claim that Amendment 3 could generate billions of dollars for Florida stem from?
Right. Yeah. So that's what the ads are saying. And so that is the kind of money that states like Colorado are bringing in from legalizing recreational marijuana. But what the group of economists interestingly did note in this analysis, Ariane, is that the more than half of the states, I believe, that they reviewed, they wound up imposing a separate excise tax that would be on top of the sales tax. And that was how they're able to generate some of that extra money. Now, just like it would to actually implement this, in Florida here, that would also require then legislative action if they wanted to add an additional tax.
Okay, so let's go back to those ads then, Josh. They talk about how this money is going to help schools, help teachers. Is there any guarantee that this money is going to be allocated to those causes?
No guarantee. So if Amendment 3 is approved, stop me if this sounds familiar, it would be the state legislature that would then ultimately determine how that tax revenue is allocated. And it is true that there are several states that do allocate funding for their marijuana tax revenue that goes to teacher pay, education. Some do allocate it to criminal justice and policing, both items that were focused on in these ads. There's actually nothing in the text of the amendment itself that would require the money go anywhere. So that could be the case. That's why we labeled it as misleading ultimately, because we just don't know right now. And right now on our free 10 Tampa Bay app, you can find answers to your questions about other constitutional amendments on the ballot, including Florida's Abortion Amendment 4. Finally, a lot of the ads that you are probably seeing during commercial breaks right now are for political candidates. And sometimes you might see a lot more ads from one candidate than you see from their opponent. And it raises a question we hear a lot during the election. Aren't candidates guaranteed equal airtime? Verify's Casey Decker has the answer.
Our sources are the FCC, the Communications Act of 1934, and David Schultz, a law professor at the University of Minnesota. The idea of equal time for candidates on TV comes from the Communications Act, which is enforced by the FCC. It says that if a candidate appears for more than 4 seconds on a TV station's air, that station, quote, shall afford equal opportunities to all other such candidates for that office. But there are some big exceptions. Notably, news coverage or interviews don't count. What does count is entertainment content. For example, when Dr. Oz ran for Senate, he stopped making his show, in part because any station that aired it would have had to offer equal free airtime to his opponent. But there's another key limitation of this law. Notice it says equal opportunities, not actually equal time. So if a candidate buys an ad for $1,000 in primetime, the station has to give their opponent the option to purchase an ad for the same price at the same time. But if the opponent doesn't want to buy that ad space, the station doesn't have to do anything else.
It doesn't mean that it has to give, at the end of the day, the same amount of real time if some candidates have more money and can actually purchase more time. All it says is we've got to provide the same opportunity.
And yet another limitation, this law only applies to broadcast TV and radio. So cable and the internet aren't affected by any of this. That means CNN, ESPN, Hulu, Facebook, none of them have to offer equal advertising opportunities. And Elon Musk doesn't have to give Kamala Harris a highly promoted interview on X just because he gave one to Donald Trump. That means we can verify no, political candidates are not guaranteed equal amounts of ad time. With your Verify, I'm Casey Decker.
And we thank all of our Verify viewers for your questions for this episode. As always, if you see something you would like us to verify, you can email your questions to verify@10tampabay.com or text 727-577-8522. With your Verify on 10 Tampa Bay, I'm Josh Sidorowicz. Thanks for watching.